Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for having me. So my name's Stuart Easton. Can somebody give me a quick thumbs up? You can see the screen. You can see some silly rubber ducks, all that kind of good stuff. Just drop it into the chat, and if you can, just building on what Obadiah just said, take a minute and go find. Thank you, Obadiah. Go find this under the Stage tab, the chat feature. And what I'd love you all to do is just drop in a quick introduction to yourselves, who you are, where you are. We've got people signed up from all around the world. Thank you, June. So just drop in there who you are, where you are in the world, and we've been having something of a heat wave here in the UK. So I'd love to know how hot it is where you are as well, and let's see who's got the highest temperature. I know we got some people from we've got one or two people even from Australia who are signed up, so we may even have some temperatures from down under to compare. So just get used to the chat. We're going to use the chat a little bit today. Just so you know, there's a bit of a delay between when I say something and when you guys hear it. So when we get to that bit where I ask you to jump into chat, jump in there quickly, because there's going to be an awkward pause while we wait for you guys to start chatting. So just drop in, say hi, tell us where you're from. Fantastic. Keep going. Part of the point of these sessions is to network. So, have a look at the other people on here. If they look interesting, jump onto LinkedIn, connect. Jump onto LinkedIn, connect with me by all means as well. So, as Obadiah said, my name's Stuart, and I am very lucky in my job because I get to talk to executives, C-suite executives often around the world about projects and portfolios and the strategy execution process and all that kind of good stuff. And one of the things that I've learned over the years doing this is that projects are like ducks. Now, that seems like kind of a weird thing to say, right? So projects are like ducks. What do I mean by this? Well, what I mean is that your executives really don't care about your projects. They don't care if you have a boy duck or a girl duck, right? They don't care about waterfall or agile. They don't care about your Gantt charts and your burn down reports and your own value reports and your risk registers. They don't care about any of that, right? So they don't care if you have a boy duck or a girl duck. They just want eggs, right? It's all about the egg. It's all about the value of the project, and not about the project itself. So what we're going to talk about today is how we can help executives get bigger eggs, focus on the right eggs, deliver more eggs, and break fewer eggs. Okay, so we're going to go through that whole cycle. Now, there's a QR code. I'm going to show this a couple of times. This QR code, if you go in there, it'll take you to a form where you can then download all kinds of videos, ebooks, blogs. There's a whole bunch of resources back here that will help get you started with these 4 techniques, right? Bigger eggs, the right eggs, more eggs, break fewer eggs. So this will come up again later on. So if you miss it right now, don't worry. But there's a bunch of resources to help you get started. By nature, this is going to be a fairly short session. So I'm aiming for sort of 40, 45 minutes, something like that, so that we have time for a little bit of time for Q&A. Okay, so why do I think we have a problem? Why do I think that executives struggle with PMO and the project delivery community in general? Okay, well, here's some data, right? This is PMI data for project success rates and failure rates over a number of years. And this line here is the project failed, budget lost line, right? So this is total disaster time. and it's been about a third, right? It hasn't really changed. It just hovers around a third of projects overall that are budget failed with budget lost. Now, let's put that into context. So into chat, please. So just be ready with your fingers. Give me a quick thumbs up or a yeah if you commute to work, if you drive to work, for example, every or I don't know. We all kind of hybrid work these days. A lot of us work from home. So just give me a quick thumbs up if you work if you commute to work regularly. I'm sure that's going to burst into life any second now when the signal gets through. There we go. So we're starting to see some thumbs up. Okay. So imagine this, right? So you drive to work roughly 20 days a month. Imagine if your car halfway to work burst into flames and burnt to the ground, right? 6 or 7 times, 6 or 7 days every month. How would you feel, right? How would you feel about that car? Would you keep that car? I wouldn't. I'd want to get rid of it. That's what the execs are seeing, right? They're seeing this failure, and they're frustrated. Right? 6 or 7 times a month, the car's bursting into flames and not getting them to the office. It's just not good enough. It's not reliable enough. It's frustrating. We've all seen numbers like this. Statistics. Okay, so this is AIPM data, but there are other studies out there with similar numbers. Gartner's numbers are even worse than this, for example. But AIPM data, around half of projects fail to achieve the business goal. About 60% budget are over budget. About 60% are late. Okay. Now, again, give me a say boo or something in the chat, right? If you think if this makes you feel really angry, right? Because we sometimes we see statistics and we get kind of used to them, right? You get desensitized to the statistics. So, is there anybody who's willing to say that when they see these statistics, it makes them really angry? Um, so, I'm not seeing a lot of boos coming. Yeah, we got one or two, right? One or two people kind of saying, yeah, 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 that's kind of angry. But considering how many people we got on here, right? Everybody should be giving me a boo right now because this should make you really angry. Um, and if it doesn't make you feel really angry, I want to try and help you reframe it so that you do feel really angry about these numbers. All right. So here we go. Right. I live in Cambridge, and this obviously is London. This is what London's like, yeah, in the middle of the winter, right? So we've all seen this, right? We've all lived through this, and so round about February, I usually start thinking like this, right? I'd like to go somewhere nice. Maybe we'll head off to Barcelona or something like that, right? Very nice at that time of year. So you go to the travel agent. You say, how much would it cost me to fly out to Barcelona for a long weekend? 4-day weekend, get some sun, recharge my batteries, and escape the horrible murky weather in the UK. So the first thing is actually I'm really surprised by that number. That seems really expensive. But you know what? Okay, if that's what it costs to get some sunshine back in my life and to recharge my batteries, then I guess I'll just have to pay it, right? So this is what it's like for the executive who is commissioning a project, right? They're probably a bit surprised at how expensive it is. That's very common. The most common feedback I get from executives about projects is that they're too expensive, they take too long, and they don't deliver the intended benefit, right? Those three things. So this is not me making stuff up. So I pack my bags. Right? I want to get some sunshine. I pack my bags, I go to the airport, and they say, "Oh, you want a bag? Oh, well, that's €500 extra." Really? I mean, you're the professional. You're flying me all. You're flying people all the time. You didn't know I'd need a bag to go on holiday. You're going to charge me extra for that. So this is where kind of little scope creep things where the business expects something that you would just know it, right? That would be needed, and so we've started scope creep already, and the cost of the project is going up. But you know what? I'm not going to worry about it. I'm looking forward to my holiday in the sun. Right? So we keep going. And so we're up in the air after about half an hour. They bring out some food. I'm eating the food and they say, yeah, it's another €100, please. Really? Really? That seems really expensive for some plastic food, right? So the scopes crept again. They said, yeah, we didn't realize you were going to have food. So, it's another $100, please, €100, right? So the scopes changed a little bit again. The cost has gone up again. But then it gets really interesting because now we hit turbulence, right? The airplane's shaking all over the place and everybody's a little bit worried. So the pilot comes on and he says, ladies and gentlemen, we are attempting to minimize wind shear as we encounter countercyclonic airflows, which are causing ramjet effects to be reduced. Did anybody understand any of that? Because I didn't. But this is what it's like when a project hits turbulence, right? And you go in and you start talking in project language to your executives. Right? They don't understand the project language. They don't understand what you're talking about when you're saying, well, here's our own value report and we're going to do this to get it back. They don't understand any of that. What I want to hear from the pilot is, ladies and gentlemen, don't worry about it. This turbulence is going to last a couple of minutes, and then we'll be on our way to Barcelona. That's what I want to hear, right? I don't want to hear about countercyclonic airflows. I don't understand what that means. I don't know what to do with that information, and it just confuses me and worries me. So that's what it feels like to the executives. But we get through the turbulence. We do land eventually. We're a bit late. We're a day late. So now my 4-day mini break has turned into a 3-day mini break, right? So I've lost a quarter of the value. Oh man, I'm really not happy, right? So my project is over budget. It's late. It's been a bumpy ride, but you know what? We're in Barcelona. I'm going to enjoy Barcelona. It's going to be sunny. It's going to be beautiful. I'm really looking forward to getting that time in the sun. So you get to the bottom of the steps, and then wow, this is amazing. The flight attendant gives you a coin. Says flip the coin. If you get heads, carry on, go through passport control, enjoy your 3-day break. But if you get tails, you're back in London. How would you feel? Right? You go through all that, you spend the money, right? You spend that money. It's more than you think it should be. And the cost keeps going up and you're late. So that means instead of a 4-day break, I've got a 3-day break. And now I'm not even in Barcelona. I'm back in London. That's what it's like when that project fails. That's what it's like when that project doesn't achieve the goals, the business goals that it was set up to achieve. Okay. That's why I want us all to be really angry by those statistics. Don't become statistic blind. I beg you, please don't. So let's keep going, right? That's what these statistics mean. It's what it feels like. And this is so bad. And you can find lots and lots of examples of this. I like this one. It's so bad that executives, senior executives, kind of assume that their IT project is doomed from the start, right? I mean, the 75% of them believe that the IT projects are doomed before it's even begun, right? That just can't be right. And it's not good. It's not good for the business, but it's not good for our careers as well in the project community. And at the end of the day, we only do projects to achieve strategy. So I would like to ask you to jump into chat really quickly. Who on this call is in project delivery in some form? Whose job is project delivery? So just give me a quick wave or something in the chat. I don't care what you say. Just pop something in the chat if your job is project delivery. Just give you a few seconds. Yeah, we've got 1 or 2 coming in here. Fantastic. Lots of people in project delivery. Yeah, lots and lots of people in project delivery. All right, I got to tell you, you're not in project delivery. That's not what your job is. Your job is to help execute the strategy of the organization, right? That's your job. What you're doing it by helping implement projects, absolutely. But the job is to help execute the strategy of the organization. That's why the executives have a project delivery capability to help them achieve their strategy. And the statistics on the screen right now tell us that's not working. Right. So 80% of organizations are good at formulating the strategy, but around half of them are actually able to feel like they're good at executing it. Nearly 70% of well-formulated strategies fail due to weak execution. That's us. That's our community that's doing that, right? And that's why your executives are stomping around like the incredible duckling here, right? Well, big, green, and angry, right? We don't like big, green, angry executives. Um, Adil, that's a great point. We may get time to talk a little bit about that later on. When we get, in particular, when we talk about bigger eggs. Okay, so if I forget, remind me, if I see the chat, I will come back to that. Okay, so all of this is why 78% of PMOs are called into question. Almost 70% are seen as bureaucratic. Half of PMOs that are started never actually go operational, and of those that do, half of them die within a couple of years. Right? It's no big surprise that they're in hot water. So I want to see if this will work. This may not work on Ring Central, but this is this is a guy called Fred Casagrande. Fred is a superstar PMO leader. So he runs a multi-billion-dollar PMO out in Dubai. He was a board member of the PMO Global Alliance. He's been a board member of various PMI chapters, and so on and so forth. Right. So Fred's a superhero. So I'm going to go on. I'm going to go to the next slide, but I suspect. So my question. So my question to Fred. Okay. So the question to Fred there was, what do execs think of PMOs? And if you couldn't hear it, what you probably saw on the screen was it's an overhead, it's a cost center, purely and simply, right? That's that's what executives see and think of the project delivery community and the PMO in particular. So I think it's time we figured out how to fix it, right? So first of all, a little bit of introspection. How many people? So question from Moses. Yes, the slides will be available at the end, and there's a bunch of other materials as well. If you click through the QR code that we talked about earlier on. All right. So very quickly, um, I'm not going to ask you to jump onto chat for this one because I don't want to embarrass anybody. But my question is this you, right? Are you a duck farmer? In other words, are you focused so much on your projects and your templates and your project process and agile versus waterfall and methodologies that you're focused on the projects and how people do projects rather than focusing on the eggs and how we get to the egg, right? If this is you, right, we're going to try and give you some guidance on how to change from being here. All right. Because at the end of the day, from the business's point of view, from your executive's point of view, it's all about the egg and it's all about value. Um, and I'll tell you what we're going to do. In the interest of time, we'll skip this a little bit and we'll jump into here. There we go. All right. So it's all about bigger eggs, the right eggs, more eggs, break fewer eggs. 4 levers that you've got to pull to increase the amount of egg that we deliver to the business. So let's start off with bigger eggs. And this is fundamentally a question of project prioritization. So Adil, when you were talking about the strategy and the plan, right? The prioritization is the bridge that goes from the big vision strategy into the plan. What are we actually going to do? Right? That process is about the prioritization and portfolio management more generally. All right. So the portfolio management piece is an absolutely critical component of a good, functioning, efficient portfolio strategy execution engine, right? I'm not saying project delivery, I'm saying strategy execution. That's why we're doing projects. It's about the egg, not the ducks. Okay. So it's a strategy execution engine that we're trying to build. And you can't do that effectively without a good portfolio management capability. So project prioritization is child's play. It's super simple. Very quickly, jump into chat. If you offer a 5-year-old these eggs, which eggs will they take? Which they can only choose 2 eggs. Which 2 eggs would a 5-year-old take here? This is how easy prioritization is. So anybody want to guess which eggs the 5-year-olds will take? The biggest. There we go. Nailed it. Yeah, it's easy, isn't it? They're going to take the biggest. But the problem is that in a complex organization, and everybody in this on this call probably works for complex organizations, is that it's not quite that simple, right? It's not quite as simple as just taking the biggest, because you've got some children. Sorry, try that again. You've got some executives, maybe it's the same thing, who like pink eggs, some who like green eggs, some who like chocolate eggs, some who like jelly eggs, some who like peanut butter eggs, right? And so as in an organization, we have to figure out, how do we define what a good egg is? Is it just size? Is it just return on investment financially? Usually not, right? Return on investment, financial return on investment is just one dimension of what your strategy is. But you might have, developing new markets, new products. You might have environmental goals. There are lots of different components to a strategy. And so we have to get people bought into that and agree what that definition is. Now, when you don't have everything aligned around prioritization, you tend to see symptoms like he who shouts loudest, right? So as I go through these, just be dropping me big thumbs ups if one of these resonates with you and you're living through this, right? So he who shouts loudest, the projects just get done because someone shouts about it, or they've got power and it's their pet project and they really want it to happen, and they just keep going and the project gets done. This is super common. Another symptom is that it's really difficult to stop projects, right? So once projects start, it can be difficult to stop them if they get into trouble or they start dragging on, and you end up with zombie projects, right, that just drag on forever. Squeaky wheel, right? So this is where someone just kind of goes around the back door, goes around the process, and goes to the delivery teams and just sort of says, "Hey, listen, look, hey, can you do me a favor? Right, I just need this to get done. Can you just do it?" And then they go back the next day and say, "Did you manage to do it? Could you just do that little task for me? Just take care of it." Right. Now, the scary thing about this is that managers do this because it works. Right. I know it works because I did it earlier in my career. So a million years ago, I used to work for a software company out in Boston, Massachusetts. And twice a year, I'd fly back to the UK. I'd fill my suitcase with Cadbury's chocolate, and I would fly back, enjoy some time with family, and then fly back to the States. And then I would take the chocolate into the office and head for the developers floor, right? And so there's big cube land full of developers, and I'd walk in and everybody would jump up and it's like, "Oh, Easton's back, because they knew that meant chocolate, right? Cadbury's chocolate, which is so much better than anything you can buy in America. And any Americans on the call want to agree with that? Give me a quick thumbs up. If you disagree, tough, you're wrong. Okay, so Cadbury's chocolate, so much better than anything you get in America. So I would just hand out chocolate to all the engineers, and they loved it. And so anytime that I needed something for one of my customers, I would just wander into the engineering department. I wouldn't go through the request process. I wouldn't go through the approval process or the committee. I would just wander in and say, "Hey, can anybody help me?" And of course, they'd all jump up and say, "Yeah, I can help." Now, at the time, I thought I was being really clever because I was helping my customers. But what I didn't realize is that by doing that, I was drawing resources away from projects and tasks that actually would add more value overall for the organization. So, the squeaky wheel thing, right? It's not bad intent on the part of the people who have been squeaky, right? They're trying to do the right thing. They just don't realize that there's a bigger picture. And that by being the squeaky wheel and stealing resources from other projects, you're actually slowing the organization down and preventing it reaching its business goals. Um, and if we were doing this session in person, by the way, I would have brought a whole bunch of these chocolates and put them on your chairs. But since you're all having your lunch right now, you can provide your own chocolate later on. Okay, right. So then we come to the next one. If you're running an IT portfolio in particular, sometimes projects get done because the engineers think they're cool, right? They love the technology. There's a new language or there's a bit of AI. Hey, I'll do that project. I want to do that project. Forget that boring one where we're just sort of making the customer successful. I want to do that because it's exciting, right? So shiny new toy, that's not a good way to pick projects. Um, and ultimately, what this all leads to, right? The biggest symptom, the most common symptom that I hear of a weak prioritization process is that we just have too many projects, right? The coffee's spilling all over the place because it just, the cup's full and we're just pouring more coffee into it. That's not a good idea. And we'll come to why shortly. So, what typically happens is that someone will go away and say, "Hey, I know what we'll create some intake process, and so we'll define some criteria, and we'll score our projects against those criteria." But here's the challenge. Here's what happens next, is that you want to weight those criteria. So you write them on a whiteboard. You bring the execs into a room, write them on a whiteboard, and you say, "Criteria number one, what weight should we give this?" And the CEO leans back and she says, 23.7%. Now, there are two problems here. The first one is she just made that number up. It is not a meaningful number. There's loads of psychology research that backs this up, but it's really not a very meaningful number. Second problem, this is the big problem. Now everyone around the table is sitting there going, I don't think it's 23.7%, but I've only had one coffee this morning, so I don't think I'm going to have a fight with the CEO. So you stay quiet. Next criteria, same thing happens. Next criterion, same thing happens. So by the end of the meeting, the only thing that everyone agrees on, with the possible exception of the CEO, the only thing everyone agrees on is that the criteria weighting model, the scoring model for projects that you've just spent 2 hours putting together is wrong. I know it's wrong because I disagreed with everything that went into it. So how do we fix it? Because we have to fix this. Everyone around that table has a different interpretation. Some of them want red eggs, some of them want blue eggs, some of them want jelly eggs, right? Every one of them has a different implementation, a different interpretation of what the strategy of the business is and how that should translate into a measurement of value for projects. So we have to fix that if we're going to fix prioritization. So there's a lot of research, decision science and psychology research, and there is a right way or a best way to do it, right? There's no perfect way, but there is a best way to do it in complex organizations. And that's something called the analytic hierarchy process, AHP, analytic hierarchy process. Again, behind that QR code, I'll give it to you later on. There's loads of material on AHP and how to get started with AHP. So I'm not going to dig super deeply, but I'll give you a quick idea. So the idea is when we're weighting those criteria, for example, we never ask someone to weight a criteria. What weight do you want on that criteria? Because it's a bit like if I asked you, how tall is that tree on the right? Yeah, you might guess it's 20 meters, 30 meters, 32.7 meters, right? Yeah, no, you're wrong, right? It's not 32.7 meters, right? You're going to get it wrong. But If I ask you which tree is taller, you're going to get that right every time. Okay. And AHP uses this trick. It's called pairwise comparison. Some of you may have heard of it before, but it does it in a very structured way that gets you good results in a way that you can use it to score projects. So when you score your projects against those criteria, which have been weighted using AHP, then we can very clearly we can measure the projects, and each project gets a score between 0 and 100, and 100 is good, 0 is bad, and we can see small eggs, medium eggs, big eggs, and we can start to pick the big eggs. All right, so if you want to learn more about AHP, here's the QR code again. I'm not going to pause for long here because we've got lots to cover, and I'm going to show you that QR code again later. All right, now, ruthless focus on the right eggs. Right, here's a PMI statistic. So 20% of projects are waste. By that, I mean 20% in a typical portfolio, 20% of projects are so badly aligned with the goals of the organization that they should be stopped, right? That's a pretty good definition of the word waste. So if you are running the business, right, and this is where the business is today, and this is where you want to be, right? That's your goal over there. You want to get the business over there. So that arrow is kind of the egg is the goal, and the arrow is kind of your plan to get there. And you've got capacity to do 20 projects. The matchsticks are the projects. So you pull your execs together. You have a bit of an argument, bit of a fight, meeting, and they pick 20 projects. Cool. Okay. So what we'll do? Let's start at the start, and we'll do our first project, and then we'll do our second project, and then we'll do our third project. Okay. And we're going to keep going until we've done all the projects. And you know what? We've made some progress towards our goal, but not enough, right? We haven't got to the goals. But now this is where we remember this number, right? And again, most people think of 20% waste. Oh dear, that's a shame. Most people think, oh dear, that's a shame. We're wasting money, but it's much, much worse than we're wasting money. Okay. That 20% projects are actually often taking you in the wrong direction. They're taking you away from your goal. So 20% projects, that's these 4 projects here. So let's get rid of them. Let's just stop those projects. And then we'll rearrange the matchsticks again. And look what's happened. Suddenly, we're all the way out here on the right-hand side, out by the goal. Now, this is the real insight. To get from here to here, we didn't ask for more budget. We didn't need more resources. All we did was remove the 20% of projects that were taken as away from our goal, the 20% of waste. That is really profound, guys. And it gives me goosebumps every time I do this. And it's not just theoretical nonsense, right? So there's research that shows that when you align, so this is when you align the, strategic alignment. So how well you align your investments and your work in the business is correlated about 80% with the performance of that organization. This applies to business, to the for-profit community, it applies for the government community. And it's really, really powerful. Probably the most important decision that any business makes in a year is this decision around project prioritization and alignment. Okay, it is massive and it is profound. Focusing on the right eggs is an absolute game changer for an organization's performance. Third technique or third lever, more eggs. We want more eggs. Yes, please. Okay, here we go. Get ready. Fingers on keyboards. So let me tell you this. Let me ask you this, right? First question, why do we build roads? What is a road for? You may want to keep your fingers near the keyboards for the next few minutes. We're going to do a few of these. So is MD brave enough to have a guess at why we build roads? What's the point of a road? movement, provide access routes, connection, to get you from one end to the other. Well, I like that one. Connectivity. Okay, that's good. So we've got a couple of people who are thinking about to get from A to B. To get what from A to B, right? It's to get people and goods from A to B. So if you think about a road, right? There's only so much road, right? There's only so much capacity. So that's like your resources. The cars are like projects, and the people inside the cars, that's the value, right? And so in this case, we've got an empty road. There's 0% utilization. So how much value is being delivered right now? Again, jump into the chat. How much value is being delivered right now? We'll just wait for a second for the chat to catch up. 0. Love it. Perfect, Anna Maria. Thank you. 0. Yep, absolutely. So let's put some cars on the road. So we got something like 30% utilization here. Cars are zooming along. People and goods are getting to the destination. Everybody's happy. So someone looks at this, right? So the executives look at this and they say, well, 30% utilized. Let's put some more cars on the road, right? Then maybe we can get more value, right? So they get to 50% utilization. And there are more people getting there. So then, right, this is where it gets really fun. Then some bright spark says, let's go for 100% utilization, right? You can't do better than 100% utilization. So let's go for 100% utilization. But we have a name. We have several names actually in the English language for 100% utilization of a road. Does anybody know can anybody guess what one of them might be? Go on, what do we call 100% utilization of a road? Anyone? There we go. Traffic jam. Nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. First one, nailed it. Yeah, look at this. You got it. That's exactly it. Right? That's 100% utilization of the road. Now let's translate this into, actually, before we leave there, so because of the delay, normally I would ask you again, how many people are getting to their destination? But there's too big a delay, so I'm going to just press on. And the answer to that question, how many people are getting to the destination right now, is not many. Some are getting there, but not many, right? Because we've got this traffic jam. So let's put this into project land. Okay, the vertical axis is how much business value is delivered. Horizontal axis is resource utilization. So if we don't do any projects or few projects, we're not delivering much value. So we do more projects and we do more projects. And then somewhere round about here, this is usually at about 80 to 85% capacity, right? Your resource utilization. You start to get resource contention. And if you add projects, any more projects, you don't get more value, you get less. And what's really interesting is that most organizations that we see are not at 80%, they're not at 90%. They're often not at 100%. They're often at 110, 120, even 130% of capacity. Right. And so they're way down the curve on the right-hand side. And so the people are under pressure, they're making mistakes, but you're getting no more value as a business than you would be if you were somewhere over on the left-hand side of the chart. All right. So with AHP, this prioritization mechanism, AHP, first of all, we've got rid of the 20% rubbish projects. So our curve is higher. And what AHP lets you do is quantify the value and figure out how to put yourself on top of the hill, right? Which is where you want to be. And that's a huge, look at that. That's more than a doubling in this example of value. Now, actually doing this in practice can be quite difficult. So there are AI tools now, transparent choice among them, that will help you do this, that will run hundreds or thousands of scenarios to find the one that puts you on top of the hill. Right, which is really cool. You couldn't do this a few years ago, but today that technology is available. And again, the QR code will tell you a little bit more about that. But we're not done. We can get more, even more eggs, right? It's not just about putting yourself on top of the hill. So you go through the planning cycle every year, and the execs pick a bunch of projects. First day of the year comes along, right? Budget's freed up. So all the execs come and jump up and down. They bang on your door. They're jumping up and down. They're saying, "Can you get started now? Get started now, please. Start my project." Right. So yeah, you want to keep them happy. So you start a project. So you start doing project one, then you jump to project two, you jump to project three, and then you go back to project one. Now, at this point, the execs are actually quite happy because you've started their projects. But there's a problem, because as you're going along, right, you're going project one, project two, project three, project one, project two, project three. You hand it off to the next team, and the same thing happens, right? So the first value comes all the way over here on the right-hand side, right? And worse than that, because we're task switching, right? We're jumping from project to project. When you do that, the American Psychology Association did some research and found that up to 40%, 40% of your capacity is lost when you're task switching, right? So think about it. It's not just getting your head from one task into the other. It's the fact that also, you're just settling down to do your task. And then, on project one, and the manager from project two comes along and says, "Hey, how are you getting on with my task?" And so you've got to take 10 minutes to explain to them why you can't do that today. We're going to do that next week, and blah, 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 blah. Right. And then you have to get yourself back into project one and get going. So by the time, 3 or 4 people have asked you, "What's the update on my task?" Right. You've lost half your day. That's why it's so unproductive. So let's do it differently, right? Here's an idea. Instead of going to project one, project two, project three, jump, 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 let's focus on project one, get it started, get going, and only start project two when we expect to have resources available to deliver it. And then project three, same thing, we only start that when we expect to have the resources available. Now, 2 fabulous things happen here when you do this. First, look where the value comes. So even though we're starting the projects later, we're getting the value earlier, much earlier, not a little bit earlier, a lot earlier. So that's wonderful. Earlier delivery means more value, bigger eggs. But because we're not task switching now, we get that 40% capacity back, which means we can squeeze in 1 or 2 more projects for free. No more resources, right? 1 or 2 more projects. That's more eggs right there. That's what it's all about. And again, this staggering thing, right? Being able to come up with a good portfolio plan like this, a portfolio roadmap, if you like, is quite difficult, right? Even with a good PPM tool, it can take you half a day, or I've spoken to people where it takes, a couple of days to come up with this master plan for which projects should we do in what order, so we don't overload our people. It takes a lot of time, and that's a problem, because then it means you don't do it often enough. So now there is AI again, and there are companies like Transparent Choice and 1 or 2 others. There's an Irish company whose name escapes me right now that does this as well, that can automatically use AI to schedule the projects for you, to find the optimal sequence of events, and to do it in seconds, right? Which means that when something changes, instead of having to sit down and then do it all manually again, you just press a button and it'll resequence everything in seconds. And so you've always got a plan that's up to date, that's not overloading your people, but is maximizing the delivery velocity. Really, really powerful stuff. And again, there's the QR code. We'll come back to that again later on. Now, because we are now focusing on one project at a time, your resources are juggling less, right? They're just focusing on one thing, and they're really thinking about it. They're not thinking about one thing and then jumping to another and then coming back and forgetting where they were quite up to. And because we're juggling less, that means we make fewer mistakes and we break fewer eggs, our 4th technique. So, final question, I think, probably. Who gets the blame when a project goes wrong? When a project's late, who gets the blame? Jump into chat. Who gets the blame? Oh, that's a good question, Femin. If we've got time, we'll come back to that one at the end. Yeah, project manager. There we go. It's always the project manager gets the blame, right? So the project manager gets the blame. They're all cowboys. They're just making stuff up. It's the Wild West out there, right? We've heard it all. But in reality, that's not true in most organizations now, right? There's at least some professionalism, some training, but usually you've got PMPs out there who actually do know how to run a project. And before this professionalization, by the way, if you remember that 30% number of total failures, total car crash, burn your car to the ground time, well, that number wasn't 30%. That number was 60%. Okay. So all of this project management stuff that we've done over the years has had an impact. It's good, but we still have some ways to go, right? So if it's not that the project manager is a cowboy, why are projects broken? Well, usually what you hear is that the resources are late. Okay, the resources are delivering late. That's why we're late. So you go to the resources and you say, why? Well, it's because we're juggling, right? If I'm juggling 13 different tasks all at the same time, right? And every time I finish one, you give me three more. Well, of course I'm going to be late. And I'm going to drop things on the ground as well, right? But why? Why is it like that? Why do you have 13 things you're doing? Is it because we can't do resource management? Usually not. It's not. This is not actually a resource management problem, right? We've got resources and we know how to allocate tasks. It's not a resource management problem. It's simply that there are too many projects. There's too much work and it's not being scheduled properly, right? But it's primarily the workload that is driving this project failure, which brings us right back full circle to project prioritization and how important that prioritization is, right? So it's all about put yourself on top of the higher hill to maximize value. And the further to the right on this chart that you go, the more eggs you break. So if you want bigger eggs, pick these ones. But if you want fewer broken eggs, get rid of those, stop them, get rid of them, right? Because getting rid of a bunch of your eggs will allow you to focus on the bigger eggs, the eggs on the right, to make sure you deliver the value for the egg. All right. So I'm going to ask you all to really take this idea on board and to share it with all your colleagues in strategy execution, which the artist previously known as project management, right? We're now in strategy or business execution or vision execution, or call it whatever you want to call it. But get the focus away from the ducks and say it's all about the eggs. So 4 techniques, just a reminder: bigger eggs, all about prioritization. The right eggs, really making sure you're ruthless about killing off the eggs, the projects taking in the wrong direction. More eggs is all about top of the hill, putting yourself on top of the hill and breaking and staggering. And breaking fewer eggs is about making sure your resources are not overloaded and they're focused on one task at a time if you possibly can. When you do that, by the way, we will often see that the organizations, just by doing this, not by changing how you do projects or anything like that, we will often see that when you do this and you do portfolio management like this really, really well, then you can more than double the egg that you're delivering to the business with the same resources, the same money, just by changing that portfolio management governance layer. Okay. Wow, that's pretty big. So how to get started? Option 1, download free resources. So I'm going to leave that there for a few seconds. Then the second option would be to reach out to me. Very often what I hear when we go through this kind of a discussion is the execs just don't listen to me. They won't listen to me. I had this conversation where there was a lady flew all the way from Australia to the UK so that we could sit down by the river here in Cambridge with a nice cold drink on a hot sunny day, and we could brainstorm how to help her get her executives' attention, right? So people really, PMO leaders, I feel your pain, right? So what we've done is we've created a little free mini workshop, which we call the Case for Change. It's an hour, and then maybe another hour to review, where we help you articulate in the language of the business what is the pain that they have, right? So it's projects cost too much, take too long, and don't deliver the benefit. I have no visibility. I don't understand why we're doing these projects. What's the link between our business goals and the projects we're actually doing? Those are the kind of things that we hear from leadership teams. Do some root cause analysis on that, and then present back how you can fix it. And when you present that to your executives in their language, not in project language, in their language, when you do that, usually light bulbs go off and they go, okay, yes, I would like that, please. Please give me that. Okay. So this is a really good way to get started if you want to try and fix some of these problems. And the third one would be to get a copy of this book. If you can find me at a conference, I'm at conferences all the time. If you find me at a conference, I usually have a couple of copies going that I carry around with me. But this book is a really good way to, as a PMO leader or business transformation leader, to learn how to make the change happen, how to engage your executive team in a conversation about the stuff that the executive team cares about. And in fact, the Case for Change that I mentioned a minute ago is loosely based on what you would read in this book. Laura Barnard, if you're a PMO on this call and you do not know Laura Barnard, if you don't follow Laura Barnard, shame on you. Go do it now, right? Don't wait. Go do that now. Go find her online on LinkedIn and follow her. Tell her I said hi. All right. So that's about it. I'll put the PDU QR code up in a second. This is the one where you can get all those materials, the blogs and videos and ebooks and all that kind of good stuff. So I thought I would pause here. We've got about 7 minutes, something like that, for Q&A. So Obadiah, I don't know if you want to manage that. You've probably been watching it a little bit closer than I have. And if anybody has questions, just drop them into the chat now.
Okay, thank you, Stuart, for such an interesting and insightful session. There's been a number of questions. I'll take the first one. This is from Brima Latz. I hope I got that right. Which other options do executives have for strategy, delivery, or execution apart from projects? That's what he's asking.
What do they have for strategy execution apart from projects? So they're basically, the way to think about it is a cycle. So at the top of that cycle, you have the project formulation. So this is when your execs go off site with McKinsey or somebody like that, pays them $3 million to tell them what they already know, right? That's the cynical view. So you do the strategy formulation, you get your vision, your mission, you might get a few statements about, what specific goals might be for the business, things like that. Then, strategy implies that you want to change something. So that means you've got to change something, which is projects, right? So you come around the strategy cycle to projects, right? And the goal of the projects is to make the changes in the business and then to make sure that those changes then land in the operations part of the business over here. So the other part of strategy execution is operations, actually doing the job, whatever it is, making widgets, Mars bars, spaceships, whatever it is that you do. All right. So these guys are doing the job. So from that strategy formulation process, what you usually have is a bunch of KPIs or OKRs, basically goals that cascade down into the operations team. And so these projects that you're getting over here, are often being driven by this discussion here about what are those goals. So these guys are trying to improve their performance, and that flow, and that drives a bunch of the projects that you end up doing. So your projects, the benefits from those projects have to land and be adopted in operations in order to deliver the strategy. So what's really interesting here is that projects don't deliver the strategy. If they're working well, they deliver the change that allows the operations team to deliver the strategy. It's these guys who actually execute everything, right? Who actually execute the business. They turn the handle and the chocolate bars come out the end, right? And people buy them. Money comes into the business. We achieve our goals, right? So change is it's a whole cycle, but this strategy execution piece, the change piece, is the bit that enables the strategy to be executed, and then it's actually delivered. The results are actually delivered over in the operations side. So it's both sides. You got these three big domains that you need to care about. So we haven't really touched on benefit realization today. If you execute projects perfectly, but don't deliver the benefit into the operational side of the business, then you've just wasted all your time and energy, right? So the benefit realization is a piece of this process, and this portfolio management. Good portfolio management is helping those benefits land and measuring those benefits and flowing them right back up into the executive team, so they can see we put money into the change landed, and now we're getting the benefits back up into the business.
Okay, thank you. We have two more questions. One from Honor. The question is case for change same as business case? I've observed that this is used a lot in the NHS instead of business case. How are they different?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. Thanks, Honor. So they're not quite the same. I think the business case, the challenge with business cases is they tend to be quite linear and quite rational, right? So if we put in this money, we'll get this result. That's great. That's fine. That's good. You need that. The case for change is a little different. The case for change is about how do I start to change the mindset of the executive team, of the leadership team, right? I think I saw in the chat somewhere somebody had said something like, how do we get the executives to change, right? So the way I think about it is that we want to talk to the head. That's what we normally call a business case. We want to talk to the head. We want to talk to the heart, and then we want to talk to the heartbreak. Right. So the head is the business case. It's, we put some money in, we'll put some tools in, and it'll help us do these things. The heart is, hey, Mr. Executive, I know you're in pain, right? You've told me what your pain is. I'd like to take your pain away. What do you think? Right. That's not actually a rational business thing. That's about my pain going away. That's a heart thing. So really simple example is I was talking to one team just last week, and what's the biggest pain? The answer was, I don't know how many projects we're doing or how much money we're spending. Right. So that's emotional. I don't have control. I don't know what's going on. Right. That's an emotional thing. And so saying, well, what if we could fix that in 3 weeks? Would that be good? Oh, yes, please. I'd like that. Right. So that's an emotional thing. And then the heartbreak piece of the case for change is where you actually go and look historically at things that went really badly wrong, right? That really hurt. And then you do the root cause analysis and you say, hey guys, do you remember this thing? Right. And they all go, ouch, that hurts. And you say, well, look at the root cause and look at it. And if you did this, that would never happen again. Right. And so there's sort of these three components. There's the head, which is the traditional business case. There's the heart, which is things they want, problems they want to go away. And then there's the heartbreak, trying to avoid future heartbreak. And if you tell the story in those three layers, not necessarily in that order, but in those three layers, then usually you can get a big enough bite from the leadership team to get the process started to actually change the mindset, because mindset is the most difficult thing to change. So The difference between a business case, if you don't change the mindset, your business case doesn't matter, right? You've got to change that mindset as well.
All right. Thank you very much. We've run out of time. Yeah, but I love that head, heart, and then heartbreak. That's a great mode.
Awesome.
So thank you everyone for joining. The QR code is on the screen. Please can fill the form, and your PDUs can be registered. Thank you once again, Stuart, and then
Thank you, everybody.
for joining. Amanda, I'm sure you can pop the question over to Stuart. He will be happy to answer you. All right. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Yeah, feel free to connect on LinkedIn and ask questions as a follow-up. That would be great. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Obadiah.
Thank you, Stuart. All right. Bye.